Production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by
the Bartlett Area Chamber of Commerce and its member A2H, engineers, architects, and planners, creating an enhanced quality of life for our clients and community. To learn more about A2H's services and markets, visit a2h.com.
The WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
County officials on budgets, schools, and more tonight on Behind the Headlines. I'm Eric Barnes, publisher of the Memphis Daily News. Thanks for joining us. I'm joined tonight by County Mayor Mark Luttrell. Thanks for being here again.
Thank you, Eric.
David Lenore, the Shelby County Trustee. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Van Turner from the Shelby County Commission. Thanks for being here again.
Thank you.
Along with Bill Dries, senior reporter with the Memphis Daily News. We're here to talk about budgets and the impact of schools and so on. Given the really kind of historic events of what will be 2 weeks ago as this show airs, I just want to give a quick chance for each of you to kind of comment and reactions. And I want to say that we're pre-taping this because of scheduling issues. So just a quick touch, given the historic nature of what is going on and your thoughts on it. Mayor Luttrell.
Well, I think we're seeing this movement across the United States in various capacities. And I think the way that it's been handled here in Memphis, initially with very little disruption other than obviously the expressway, but few arrests, few injuries. I give a great deal of credit to the way it's been managed here in Memphis, and certainly I hope that's a tribute to our community and what lies ahead.
Yeah. David Lenore, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, my comments would echo the mayor's. I mean, certainly our thoughts and prayers go out to the victims across the country, but as the mayor said, in terms of how it was handled locally, it was very challenging and very difficult time for our nation and also our city. And I thought Interim Director Rawlings did a good job in terms of addressing the issue and working through it. There's still a whole lot of work to be done, no doubt about it, a lot of dialogue and conversation. But beyond that, I think folks are looking for real action to take place.
Yeah, Van Turner, just again, your thoughts?
Yeah, I was with a group of youth yesterday in Hickory Hill. And I think what came out of that was community policing. It is much more difficult for a citizen to do something against a police officer if that police officer has been in that community and they know that officer. And likewise, it's much more difficult for that officer to do something to the citizen if he knows, the family knows the citizen has walked up and down those streets for years. So I think that hopefully this will be an outcome of what we're dealing with now, a focus on community policing. As my colleagues have stated, I think Director Rawlings did a wonderful job. And I have my eye on our Reverend Fisher. He seems to be one of the ones that's come out of this whole movement that has good thoughts about moving the issue forward and doing it in a very logical way. And so I'm looking at him, and I think that he's doing great work and really synergizing what's going on and making sure that there is progress and there's no violence to come about, and I think that he's doing a great job.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to give everyone a chance just to do that. Again, we're pre-taping the show, so it'll be, a week has passed by the time this is aired. But let's move to the budget, and I'll start with you, Mayor Luttrell. You essentially have come to conclusion. I guess it's not final pass, technically not finally passed, or the tax rate hasn't been set. But talk about this budget season. Talk about the challenges. Talk about what you're proud of, and talk about some of the compromises you feel like you had to make.
Well, when I think of the budget season, it's really a 12-month season because we're already in preparation for the fiscal 18 budget as we move forward. So budgeting is a very complex process, and it is a year-round process. It's one where we work very closely with the trustee's office as we try to project revenues. And we always hope that it'll go smoothly, but it always becomes very chaotic toward the end. And I think that's for a number of reasons. There are a lot of competing priorities. Each of the 13 commissioners have their priorities, the things that they would like to see in the budget. And we try to work with them in that regard. Also, we have, with every commission term, with term limits here in Shelby County, we can count on at least about half of our commissioners turning over each election. And that provides a learning curve for us to try to teach up the commissioners on the subtleties and nuances of public finance. Public finance is a very complicated process. Money comes from a lot of different directions and it has restrictions as to how it can be used. And that's a process that we all have to go through to make sure that we live within those guidelines. But we did get our budget approved. Finally, I'm a little bit uncomfortable with the fact that we had to dip into fund balance. Which
how much? Did
well,
you dip in?
about $8 million. We had to dip into fund balance, which means that we're living beyond our means to some extent. And
much of that driven by needs of the schools.
Well, schools, but there were also needs by the district attorney and by the sheriff and various other elected officials. So we did have to dip into fund balance, which means that we are spending a little bit more than we're taking in, and that troubles me.
We'll come back to some of those things. Let me get everybody's comments. Van Turner, your sense of we pleased with the budget process, with the compromises that had to be made, with the increased funding and for the schools. Your thoughts?
Well, I think the mayor stated when this process was going on, the people saw the sausage being made, and sometimes it can get a little uncomfortable, and so pushing everyone past their comfort level was probably good. I mean, that's the process. The tension is good because what comes out of it is something that hopefully will move the community forward. Pulling the $8 million out the fund balance, I think, is something that should be focused upon as a one-time scenario. As the budget chairman for this process, I do not think that it is good to dip into the fund balance year in and year out.
And fund balance, a lot of people think of that as the reserve fund or the rainy day fund, right? I mean, different, same savings account, same thing. Go ahead.
But given the pressing needs that are within this community, the school needs, the needs of Amy Wyrick with the DA's office, and all that's going on right now in the community, I think the commission felt that it was necessary to do it this one time. I don't think that this should be a pattern. Hopefully it will not be a pattern going forward. And
David Lenore, the trustee, sometimes called the banker of the county's banker, does that concern you, dipping into the fund balance? And do you feel like are we going down a bad road, not just this year? Does this set a precedent that could take us in a bad direction?
Eric, I think we've taken a step down a bad road, no doubt about it. How far we are down it, I guess, is yet to be determined. But as the banker, and really one trying to protect the balance sheet for Shelby County, as both Van and the mayor said, anytime you dip into the savings account and use tomorrow's money for today's expenses, it's concerning. We've worked hard to increase fund balance during a very difficult economy. We've worked hard with the mayor's administration to reduce debt. We've been able to accomplish a $600 million reduction in debt, but yet the county is still $1 billion in debt. And so as we look to use those monies in other places, obviously there's a trade-off. I mean, that's economics 101. So where we have aggressively paid down debt in the past, we might not be able to do that. It is concerning. I feel like beyond just the revenue side of the income statement, I want to protect the balance sheet for the county, and when we use tomorrow's money to pay for today's expenses, it's a concern.
Okay, Bill.
So, is there $8 million of one-time spending in this current budget that can come out of it next year when we're in?
Much of it is not one-time spending. It's going to be recurring cost, and that even complicates the issue even more, because as the trustee said, if you dip into fund balance, it should be for one-time expenses, yet there are some items in there, the sheriff's budget, the district attorney's budget, the education budget, which are recurring expenses. This was also the year that we established our maintenance of effort for education, which means that the money that we gave education this year will be the baseline for education next year and going forward. So those are some issues that are complicating.
So do you wait for the state education department or the folks in Nashville to tell you this is what we're setting the maintenance of effort at for education funding, or is it set with the budget?
It's set with the budget. It's set with our budget.
As you all know, Superintendent Dorsey Hobson has said he expects that there will be some continued reduction in the head count of students for the school system, at least for the next school year. He's trying to stabilize that, but could that change maintenance of effort next fiscal year?
Well, the one way that you can reduce the education budget is when you have a decrease in enrollment. But keep in mind, within Shelby County, if they're leaving the Shelby County school system, they may be going to the Bartlett or Collierville or Germantown school system. So it just moves the money from Shelby County school system to one of the municipal school systems. Right. And keep in mind that Shelby County government actually funds all public education across Shelby County. So unless those students that are leaving the Shelby County school system are leaving Shelby County, then the chances are that the budget would remain the same.
Right, because we have seen some growth in the attendance in the suburban school systems without a doubt. Right. Van, what was your impression of the push for more education funding this year? How sometimes this is a really rough conversation to have about education funding. Historically, it's been a tense conversation. What do you think happened this year that was different from those past discussions?
Well, I think this was really one of the first years where you really didn't have any measurable amount of money coming from any other source. The Memphis city government, of course, is not funding education any longer. There is some money still coming in pursuant to a lawsuit, but that's not really money coming in a great amount. And so I really think that what we experienced this go around was a great need from the school district to have more funding. Furthermore, we really saw the impact of the ASD school system and what that has done, because as students move out of the district, there's still liabilities there, there's still debt, and there's still other things which remain at the school system that does not follow those students. So I think that put a strain on the budget as well. And just in referencing what the mayor said, the maintenance of effort law is sort of a state law. And so really we're bound to not decrease our funding for the school system. And although there may be some recurring costs in some of the other departments, I don't know if state law would suggest or demand that we continue that same recurring money going to those departments year in and year out. I'm hopeful that we can create, or that those departments can create more efficiencies going forward, and there wouldn't be a need for recurring costs to go to the sheriff's office or to the DA's office. And I don't think that there would be any state law in place to force us to still continue to give to those departments.
David, you look at the numbers, you look at the estimates. Is there going to be $8 million of growth between now and next year at this time?
I mean, Bill, no doubt there's a lot of private sector investment. Y'all have covered them on the show in the past. I mean, the University District, the Medical District, the Chiska Hotel, the Guest House at Graceland, the Overton Square investment. So there's no doubt there's been a tremendous amount of investment. I mean, will it equate to $8 million is yet to see. I mean, we still deal with the challenges of blight and poverty within our community. So I guess it's hopeful, but my background and experience, it's hard to make decisions today on sort of potential promises of the future.
And next year is a reappraisal year, so that's the assessor's job, but you're involved in all that. Do you have any sense of a crystal ball that that the last reappraisal on property values happened and basically caught the incredible hit to value from the Great Recession? Do you have any sense of whether the reappraisal next year will reflect an increase in the tax base, just separate from the investments, just a better housing market and a better economy?
Yeah, I mean, no doubt. I think things are improving, residential and commercial. But when we work with the mayor's administration in building our forecast, I mean, we forecast in property value increases in our annual forecast. So it's not like we wait for the 4-year reappraisal and then catch it all up at once. So these last several years, we have forecasted increases in the in the tax rolls that the assessor puts together.
That actually brings up. I mean, last year there was what should have been great news. There was a $25 million surplus, and it seemed to make everyone angry. Because they didn't know how to split, and they hadn't planned for it, and they'd made cuts and so on. How do you? I mean, it is a forecast. It's not an absolute promise. What's your sense this year of where the forecast will be?
Turner's defense, and probably some of his other colleagues, I don't know that made everyone angry, but
I say that somewhat facetiously. That's a good.
I know, but I want to clarify. We saw the surplus as a positive indication that the economy was improving. The main driver of the surplus was the taxpayers. We forecasted that the taxpayers would pay the taxes at about 94%. They actually paid at 96%.
In terms of just collections.
Yeah, right.
Delinquent, non-delinquent taxes.
And so 2% doesn't sound like a whole lot, but on an $800 million bird, it's $16 million bucks. So for us, it was a good indication that the economy was improving. Now, one day that was a good thing because the mayor's administration took that surplus and paid down debt, and that was a good thing. But one day it was a bad thing because some of the commissioners thought that they were misled in terms of. So I'm not going to say everybody was upset, but
I hear it. Yeah,
I think it depends on what day it is and what the context and the scenario is.
Yeah, let's go back. We all mentioned the recurring costs, in this $8 million. Specifically for Amy Weirich in the DA's office, that's related to body cameras, right? Which is an ongoing. The people they have to have. We've talked about body cameras quite a bit to go through all the data, to go through the video analysis. From the sheriff's department, what the recurring costs that we're talking about? What were those specifically?
Well, I think a lot of personnel needs were there.
They also had cars and
they had cars and vehicles as well. And based on the body, when we look at the body cameras, there's several ways to approach it. The Memphis Police Department approaches it a different way than the sheriff's office approach it. And it seems to me that the sheriff's office approach didn't call for as many bodies to sort of review the footage and to process the paperwork. So, again, I think if the sheriff's office and the Memphis Police Department got together, there's probably a way to create more efficiencies and to have a one set type of rule book and how you how you do this. And I think that could cost. They could cut some of the costs as well.
Are there new costs associated with, after the terrible incident downtown where the police officer was hit and killed, and there have been a couple other incidents, and just the general spike in crime? The sheriff is now providing more deputies downtown. Does that hit the budget too? Is that an ongoing expense, or is that maybe hopefully a one-time deal?
We count on the sheriff to kind of budget his funds out, and the sheriff sits down with the police director in situations like that, and I'm sure that his budget restrictions or limitations come into play. But the sheriff's budget is really crafted based upon the mission as he has defined it. So if there's going to be a redefinition, and let's say a commitment of more resources within the city of Memphis, then I'm sure the sheriff's going to have to make some adjustments in his future budget presentations. But obviously, any time that you change the mission of the organization, it's going to have a financial impact, and we'll count on the sheriff to keep us advised on what the needs are in that area.
But back to reappraisal. Do you have a crystal ball? Do you have any sense, or do you rely on David's forecast? It's a big reappraisal.
Well, it's a big reappraisal, and we rely very heavily upon the work of both the assessor and the trustee to really kind of predict for us. And one of the things I'm pleased with in our communication line is that we do have our mayor's finance administration office working very closely with the trustee, because in past years we've had situations where there was conflict between the mayor's administration and the trustee's office about projections, and that just is confusing. And Mr. Lenore and Mike Swift from our staff, I just appreciate so much the harmony that they have in working through this.
One more question for you, then I'll go back to Bill. In terms of schools is a huge part of the budget. And originally Dorsey Hobson, the superintendent, in the spring was talking about an $86 million deficit. He got that down to some, 20, 25 million or something. But they have been cutting and cutting and cutting year after year. Now, some of that's the transition from the merge, then demerge, and all the changes that have been going on with the schools. We talked about the ASDs, we talked about competition with the municipalities, but at some point they can't cut anymore, right? And at some point, everyone who comes and sits at this table says education that's the future, the kids, and that's what we need to fund. Does that concern you when you look forward? There's a point at which you just can't close any more schools or cut any more staff.
That's a dilemma that I think we're all facing, and we've had lengthy discussions with the superintendent, and he's projecting that we'll see the enrollment decline while we continue to see the cost increase in the school system. And I find that a little bit troubling. I think we're getting very close, and far be it from me to tell the superintendent how to run his system, but it's obvious that the changing dynamics of the Shelby County school system are going to require some really re-engineering of the whole budget process to determine a strong baseline of sustainability going forward.
Well, I said I was going to go to Bill, but I'm not. I'm sorry. I want, Dan, the same question to you. I mean, at what point can the school system not cut anymore? They've cut. Some people say they haven't cut enough. I'm not saying that they've done a great, but there's also this argument that they, at some point, they still have to have a certain number of schools, a certain number of staff. What is the future of the school system and funding the school system?
You know, that's an ever-evolving scenario because the charter schools continue to grow. The Achievement School District, which are the state-run schools, they continue to come in and take over some of the schools. So I think we just have to realize you can't turn the ship, you know, in a day or two. And I think Superintendent Hobson is slowly trying to adjust the school district, adjust the budget to fit this new system, which we've never seen before. And it's going to take some time, but I think Superintendent Hobson is committed to doing it. And I think we're going to, you know, have to work with him and allow that process to work its way through.
You said something just quick. Oh,
one thing that we learned when we watch other municipalities that have gone through the transition that we have, it takes years to really fully transition. And if you talk to Chattanooga or you talk to Charlotte Mecklenburg, they'll tell you the same thing. I think Memphis in Shelby County is moving through that transition process, but it's going to be a few years before we really are settled into this new system.
One thing, I think both of you said there are always increased costs with schools. What are those costs that always increase? I guess it's salaries and it's health care and it's whatever the cost of goods, you know,
post-employment benefits
all that
is a huge issue.
Right.
And with the new testing from the state, I mean, that's ever changing. And so they have to adjust to that testing.
You want to get on this?
Yeah, well,
Eric,
yes, I think my colleagues, Mayor and Commissioner Turner would agree. I mean, we're all for teachers and we're all for students. I'm in the early stages of a study just looking at the school's data. I think 1/3 of the high schools in Shelby County high schools are at 50% capacity or less. Now, let's not talk students, let's not talk teachers, let's just talk, you're running an operations, a manufacturing facility, and you look and see that 1/3 of your facilities are operating at half a capacity. I think it's disturbing to me. I think it's maybe disturbing to your audience. I'm not talking about cutting funding to the teachers or the students, but when you have a school that's built in 1926 that's at 32% capacity,
I've heard other people say this, it just sounds like a depressing place to be. It doesn't sound like a great place to learn when you're walking through what would feel like a ghost town. And I think that's an interesting thing to play out too.
Yeah, and the mayor mentioned OPEB. I mean, you know, the future liability, we had the budget summit last fall. There was very little discussion, at least publicly in the commission, about the OPEB funding. That's concerning to one who, again, understands balance sheets and future liabilities.
OPEB being other post-employment, so examples being?
Yeah, well, it's like if at the end of the show I say I'm going to give you $100, and you'd say, okay, great, but if you found out I only had $3 in my pocket, it'd be a little disconcerting.
Yeah.
And so it is a future promise to pay retirees, and I think the school funding of it is only at about 3%.
Yeah. Do they fall under the state law that hits the city of Memphis so hard it made they're having to up their ante? The school system is under that same.
The actuarially required contribution is, you know, $30 million.
And they're doing what?
Very little.
Very little. Yeah.
I think it concerns all of us, the post-employment benefits, because we're talking about insurance and you're talking about health care insurance and life insurance primarily when you talk about other post-employment. So got to get a handle on that, or we're going to get I'm afraid, a letter someday on that.
Yeah. Bill.
So is a handle on it to increase the ARC possibly in combination with a reduction in benefits?
Well, that's going to be their call.
Right.
It's going to be the school system's call. They have their own governing board, and we'll have to rely upon the Board of Education to make that determination.
Let me shift gears a bit and go back to the progress that we've made on the county's overall debt. You've been able to do some things that you haven't been able to do while the debt was at a certain level. Talk about how much that's opened up the range of possibilities of what county government can do.
Well, it certainly when we look at the needs of county government, I like to say the needs are infinite and the resources are finite. And we're in a situation now where anything that we can save on debt is money that we can reinvest in other needed services across the county. And I would point out two areas in particular that have benefited from this paying down in debt. Number one is the blight reduction initiative that we've undertaken. We put more money, and thanks to the county commission, it was approved this year to move money into blight reduction. Also, maintenance of our county roads. We have about 800 miles of road, and the revenue that we receive from the gas tax is not sufficient to really meet the needs. We're paving about 20 miles a year out of the 800-mile inventory that we have. But we were able to move a little bit more money into that function over and above what we get on the gas tax. So those are two very significant infrastructure requirements that we're able to meet without raising taxes and without it costing the taxpayers any more money.
All right, we're going to leave it on that note. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for joining us. Join us again next week.
Production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by the Bartlett Area Chamber of Commerce and its member A2H, engineers, architects, and planners, creating an enhanced quality of life for our clients and community. To learn more about A2H's services and markets, visit a2h.com.